I used to think silence meant peace. That if I kept my head down, helped when asked, and didn't stir the pot, my family would see me for what I really was: loyal, dependable, steady. Turns out, silence just made me invisible. Growing up, my parents treated my older sister, Emily, like the universe revolved around her. Every conversation started and ended with Emily, Emily's grades, Emily's new boyfriend, Emily's bright future. Meanwhile, I was the one staying late at Grandma and Grandpa's house, cooking their meals and helping with meds, the kind of stuff no one noticed until it became convenient to brag about. Mom would tell her friends, "Both my girls are doing so well," and leave out that one of those girls hadn't had a weekend to herself in years. When my grandparents passed, I thought grief might bring us closer. For a while, it almost felt that way: dinners together, shared memories, even genuine laughter. But when the will was read and I learned that the house was left to me, everything shifted. Emily's smile vanished so fast you'd think someone slapped her. Mom's eyes darted to Dad, and I could practically hear the calculations forming in their heads. They didn't congratulate me. They reasoned with me. "Sweetheart," Mom said, her voice soft but lined with control, "it would make more sense for Emily to have the house. She's getting married soon. You're still finding your footing." Finding my footing. That's how they framed my career, my apartment, my independence. I had a stable job, my own place, and zero debt. But because I wasn't posting engagement photos, I was somehow the one who needed guidance. I told them no. Calmly, politely, the way you tell a telemarketer you're not interested. They didn't argue, not then. But I could tell it wasn't over. The smiles got tighter. The phone calls shorter. Then, one afternoon while visiting, I noticed a file open on Dad's desk, property transfer forms. My name scratched out. Emily's typed in. For a second, I thought maybe it was some sort of misunderstanding, like maybe they were helping her with her mortgage paperwork. But my stomach knew before my brain did. They were actually doing it, trying to take the house, the one my grandparents left specifically to me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every word they'd ever said about family unity felt like a bad joke. The next morning, I called my grandparents' lawyer, a quiet man named Mr. Dalton who'd always liked me. When I explained what I'd seen, there was a long pause. Then he sighed and said, "You did the right thing calling me. We need to talk in person." That was the moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I was the one who finally had proof. The next day, I went back to the house, not to visit, but to prepare for what was coming. Mr. Dalton's office smelled like old paper and burnt coffee, the kind of place where secrets don't disappear, they get filed away alphabetically. He didn't waste time on small talk. Once the door closed, he slid a folder across the desk toward me. "Your parents tried to submit a property transfer request last week," he said. "The signatures were rejected, forged, obviously, but they're getting bold." Bold, that word clung to me like static. I stared at the photocopies. My own looping signature copied from the will's witness page, Emily's name typed neatly where mine should have been. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Can they actually pull this off?" I asked. "Not legally," he said. "But they're hopping to move fast enough that you won't notice until it's too late. I've seen it before. Family thinks what's yours is really theirs. But we can stop this." That word gave me something solid to hold on to. He outlined the next steps, freezing the deed's modification rights, alerting the registrar, and setting up a formal record of ownership under my name only. He also advised changing the locks, securing valuables, and keeping a written log of every contact with my parents. I left his office with a plan and a quiet fury I'd never felt before. For once, I wasn't crying or begging to be believed. I was acting. By that evening, the new locks were installed. The family photos in the hallway, the ones that made the house feel like theirs, were boxed and stored. I set up cameras at the entry points, not because I expected a break-in, but because I knew how far denial could make people go. Sure enough, the texts started the next morning. Mom told me they were dropping by to check on the house and hoped I didn't mind. I told her she'd need to schedule that through me now. She sounded surprised. "Through you? It's our family home." I took a deep breath and reminded her, "No, Mom, it's mine." No reply after that, just a string of missed calls from both her and Emily. I didn't answer, let them sit with it. That weekend, my uncle called, the one who always kept his head down during family fights. "Your parents are saying you're taking advantage of them," he said, sounding uncomfortable. "That you're selling the house behind their backs." I almost laughed. "If they're that worried," I told him, "they can call Mr. Dalton." He hesitated. "You're really not backing down, huh?" "Not this time." When I hung up, I realized something. For the first time in my life, the truth was on my side in writing, notarized, sealed. And that kind of proof changes everything. That night, I sat in the living room, my grandparents' old armchair creaking beneath me, and looked around at the walls they built with their own hands. I could still hear Grandpa's voice telling me, "Protect what's worth protecting, Maddie." I didn't know then that the next time I'd step foot in this house, it wouldn't be as a homeowner defending it. It would be as an uninvited guest at my family's greatest performance. A week later, I got the invitation, if you could even call it that. It came in the family group chat, which had been a digital ghost town since the will reading. A cheerful message from Emily popped up, complete with emojis. "Family dinner next Saturday. Everyone's invited, smiling face with smiling eyes, big announcement to share." I almost ignored it, but then I noticed the photo she attached, my grandparents' house lit up at dusk, porch lights glowing, tables set in the backyard. My house. They were actually doing it, hosting a family dinner in my home. For a few minutes, I just stared at my phone, my mind flicking between fury and disbelief. Then I called Mr. Dalton. "They've planned some kind of event at the property," I said, packing my apartment. "They must have used a spare key." He sighed. "You have them on record trespassing. I'll be there discreetly. Just observe, document, and let me handle the fallout." I didn't tell him that observing wasn't all I planned to do. Saturday came fast. I parked a few houses down, wearing a neutral outfit that wouldn't draw attention. From the street, I could already hear laughter and clinking glasses. My mom's voice carried through the night air, bright and brittle like glass about to crack. When I walked up the driveway, no one noticed me at first. Fairy lights were strung across the yard, and a banner hung over the patio. "Welcome home, Emily and Daniel." Daniel, her fiancé. My jaw tightened. So that was the big announcement. They were celebrating Emily moving into my house. I spotted Dad near the grill, playing the gracious host. The sight almost made me laugh. He was talking to neighbors, proudly gesturing toward the living room windows. "We'll probably repaint soon," he said. "Make it more our style." Our style. I didn't realize I'd clenched my fists until my nails bit into my palms. Finally, Emily saw me. Her smile faltered. "Oh, you came." "I live here," I said evenly. "Or at least that's what the deed says." The music faltered. Conversations dipped. Dad looked over, jaw tightening. Mom stepped forward with that brittle smile she used when she was seconds away from exploding. "Sweetheart," she began carefully, "we didn't think you'd be interested in something like this. It's family business." "Family business," I echoed. That's funny, since the last time I checked, forgery was a felony, not a family tradition. Mr. Dalton appeared then, stepping from the shadows like he'd been waiting for a cue. He held a folder in one hand and looked utterly composed. "Good evening," he said politely. "I represent Ms. Madison Turner, the legal owner of this property. I'd advise everyone here to gather their belongings and vacate immediately." The silence that followed was cinematic. Gasps, whispers, the sound of someone's fork clattering onto a plate. Emily went pale. Dad muttered something about miscommunication. Mom's voice cracked as she tried to spin it. But it didn't matter. The cameras were rolling, and Mr. Dalton was already documenting the scene. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just stood there, calm and steady, like my grandparents taught me to be. For the first time, I wasn't the quiet one cleaning up their mess. I was the storm they didn't see coming. I turned toward Emily, who looked like she might faint. "You can keep the decorations," I said, "but the keys stay with me." As I walked away, the laughter and lights faded behind me, replaced by the sound of my phone buzzing with messages I had no intention of answering. The next morning, the fallout began. By Sunday morning, my phone looked like it had survived a digital explosion. 17 missed calls from Mom, 9 from Dad, 3 voice messages from Emily that started with fake calm and ended with outright panic. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I sat on my couch with coffee gone cold, scrolling through the local community Facebook page, and there it was, a blurry photo from last night, captioned "Awkward Scene at the Turner Residence. Family drama or home dispute." They wanted a performance, and they got one, just not the kind they'd planned. The next call I answered was from Mr. Dalton. "They've already contacted me," he said dryly. "Claimed you staged the entire thing to embarrass them. I'll be filing trespassing reports this afternoon. I'd also recommend changing your number." I almost laughed. Good thing I was planning to. That afternoon, I drove to the house one last time. The yard was still littered with evidence of the party, half-deflated balloons, a broken champagne flute in the grass, and that stupid "Welcome Home" banner tangled in the wind. I ripped it down and stuffed it into a trash bag. Inside, the air felt different, heavy. My grandparents' framed wedding photo still hung over the fireplace, tilted slightly from where someone had bumped it during the chaos. I fixed it carefully. "They tried, Grandpa," I said quietly, "but they forgot who you raised." By the time I finished cleaning, Mr. Dalton called again. "Everything's official," he said. "The forgery attempt is documented, and the county registrar has updated the ownership protection. They can't touch it now without your consent." "Good," I said, "because I'm not giving it." He paused. "You're not keeping the house." "I'm selling it," I said, staring at the empty kitchen where my mother used to scold me for breathing too loudly. "They wanted a piece of me in these walls. They don't get it. I'll take the money and build something of my own." There was quiet on the line before he said, "Your grandparents would have liked that." When I hung up, I sat in the living room for a while, listening to the distant hum of cicadas. I wasn't sad, not exactly, just done. That's when my phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the text. "It's Uncle Ray. Your parents are saying you stole the house. They're trying to turn the family against you. I thought you should know." I took a deep breath. Of course they were. That was the next logical step. If they couldn't control me, they'd destroy my reputation. But this time, I wasn't going to let them tell the story. I opened my laptop, pulled up my grandparents' lawyer's letterhead, and started typing. The post went live at 9:14 p.m. I didn't tag anyone, didn't name names, didn't even sound angry. I just told the truth, a clean, measured version of it. When my grandparents passed, they left their house to me, the granddaughter who took care of them. Certain family members tried to transfer it illegally. I involved a lawyer, and the situation is now resolved. I'm sharing this because I won't stay silent while people rewrite history. It was short, factual, and impossible to spin. Within an hour, it had over 200 likes and a stream of comments from friends, old teachers, and neighbors, people who knew my grandparents and had watched me take care of them. "Good for you, Maddie. They'd be proud of you. Saw the cops at that address the other night. Glad you handled it legally." By midnight, Emily's version of events, the one where I supposedly stole the house, didn't stand a chance. The next morning, Mom finally broke her silence with a single text. "You didn't have to humiliate us publicly." I stared at it for a long time. Humiliate? No, expose, absolutely. Instead of replying, I forwarded her message to Mr. Dalton for the record. His response came 10 minutes later. "Smart, don't engage. Let the truth speak for itself." I sold the house that same week. The offers came fast, apparently. Sentimental property makes for great real estate headlines. I accepted one from a retired couple who said they could feel good energy in the walls. I almost laughed at that, if only they knew. On closing day, I went back one last time to meet the buyers and sign the final documents. The wife hugged me unexpectedly. "Your grandparents must have loved you," she said. "You've kept this place beautiful." It hit me harder than I expected, maybe because it was the first time anyone had acknowledged that out loud. After they left, I stood in the empty living room, sunlight spilling across the floor. I thought about all the nights I'd spent here, studying, cooking for my grandparents, pretending not to hear them whisper proudly about me. They'd trusted me with something, and I'd protected it, not just the property, but the principle. Before locking the door for the last time, I walked through each room and whispered a quiet goodbye. When I stepped outside, the "for sale" sign already had a red sold sticker across it, fluttering in the wind like a victory flag. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed again, a voicemail from Emily. Her voice cracked halfway through. "You won, okay? Are you happy now? You got what you wanted, just don't ruin what's left of this family." I didn't listen to the rest. I deleted it, turned the key in the ignition, and drove away without looking back. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. People like my parents and Emily don't lose quietly, they regroup. And I could already feel the next storm forming. 2 weeks after the sale closed, the peace I'd built began a crack. It started with whispers. My cousin texted me one morning, "Your mom's been talking at church. Says you forged documents and bullied them out of the family home." I should have expected it. The Turners never lost gracefully. If they couldn't win with lies on paper, they'd win with lies in people's minds. I scrolled through social media that night and saw the ripple effect, vague posts from relatives about betrayal and ungrateful children. Emily even reshared a post about forgiving those who destroy families for money. The comments were full of sympathy. My name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't have to be. Everyone knew who they meant. For a moment, the old guilt clawed at me, that familiar ache of wanting to defend myself, to fix things, to explain. But then I remembered standing in that yard under the fairy lights while my parents celebrated stealing from me. No explanation could rewrite that image. Instead of fighting back publicly, I decided to handle it differently. I gathered proof, every email, every text, every signed legal document Mr. Dalton had given me. Then I wrote a letter. Not a Facebook post, not a message thread, a printed letter addressed to each relative who'd heard my parents' version of the story. It was calm, direct, and signed with my full name. The truth isn't up for debate. I followed the law, honored my grandparents' wishes, and sold the house that was mine. I hope one day you'll see that family loyalty doesn't mean silence in the face of deceit. I mailed 27 copies. 3 days later, my aunt called, the one who used to avoid confrontation like the plague. "I got your letter," she said quietly. "And I believe you. Your mom's been twisting things for years. I just never had proof before." Her voice trembled. "I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner." That apology shouldn't have mattered, but it did. It felt like the first piece of truth stitching the tear back together. Soon, a few more messages trickled in. Distant cousins, old friends, people who'd seen through the noise. It didn't erase what happened, but it reminded me that silence doesn't protect the truth. It just buries it until someone's willing to dig. The next morning, I woke up to another message, this time from an unknown number. "You think this is over. You ruined our family name. We won't forget this." No signature, but I didn't need one. I knew my father's tone anywhere, that mix of anger and entitlement that always came before the storm. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I sent the number to Mr. Dalton with one line, "Add it to the record." He replied a few minutes later. "Understood. You've done everything right, Madison, but given that message, we may want to prepare for escalation." I stared at the screen, my heart steady. I wasn't scared, just ready. Because this time, I wasn't walking into their storm. I was going to end it. The escalation came faster than I thought. 3 days after that anonymous text, I got an email from the realtor who'd handled the house sale. "Hi, Madison," it began. "I wanted to confirm, did you authorize your parents to contact the buyers about revering the transaction?" I nearly dropped my phone. Reverse the transaction. They were trying to buy back the house I'd already sold. Worse, they'd shown up at the new owner's doorstep pretending to be co-signers, claiming there had been a misunderstanding in the paperwork. The buyers, thankfully, had called the realtor before taking them seriously. But that was it. I'd had enough. I called Mr. Dalton immediately. "They're harassing the buyers now," I said, packing my apartment. "I want this stopped." His voice was calm, professional, but there was a sharpness underneath. "Then it's time we escalate too. I'll file for a cease and desist order first thing tomorrow. If they contact the new owners again, we'll move forward with a restraining order." It felt surreal. My parents, the people who once lectured me about integrity, now acting like con artists caught mid-scam. That evening, Emily called from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Maddie," she said, her voice low and trembling, "they're saying you're trying to destroy them, that you've turned everyone against us." I let out a slow breath. "Emily, they destroyed themselves." "You don't understand," she said. "Dad's losing his business. Mom barely leaves the house. They're falling apart." "Because of their own choices," I cut in. "They forged my signature, lied to the family, and trespassed. Actions have consequences, Emily. You don't get to blame me because they finally caught up." For a second, she didn't say anything. Then, in a smaller voice, "You're right, but they'll never admit it, and if you think they're done." The call ended there, just static and silence. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, the city lights flickering outside. I didn't feel victorious, just tired, exhausted even. Winning against people you love doesn't feel like a win, it feels like surviving a fire that never should have started. Later that night, I found another envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting, my mother's looping cursive. Inside was a single page, torn from a notepad. "You've embarrassed us beyond repair. You'll regret this one day. Blood isn't something you can erase." I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. Not from fear, from clarity. Because for once, there it was in writing, proof that family ties weren't unconditional. They were transactional, and mine had just expired. I folded the letter, slid it into the folder with the rest of the evidence, and sent Mr. Dalton one last message. Go ahead with the restraining order. I didn't know it yet. But that decision, that single email, was going to change everything about how this story ended. The hearing was quiet, almost anticlimactic. My parents didn't speak to me when we entered the small courtroom, not that I expected them to. My father sat stiff, jaw tight, arms crossed like a man being inconvenienced, not held accountable. My mother wore the same expression she used to wear when a neighbor caught Emily misbehaving, wounded innocence, all performance. Mr. Dalton did most of the talking. Calm, factual, deliberate. He presented the messages, the fake signatures, the letters, the texts, the voicemail threats, each one another nail in the coffin of their misunderstanding narrative. My parents' lawyer tried to pivot to emotion, painting me as an ungrateful daughter influenced by outsiders. It might have worked once back when guilt was my currency, but not anymore. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was firm but unflinching. Given the evidence and repeated attempts at intimidation, I'm granting the restraining order effective immediately. Contact of any kind will constitute a violation. The gavel hit wood with a soft thud. Just like that, it was over. Or at least, the version of me they could reach was over. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, crisp, clean, almost unreal. Mr. Dalton shook my hand. "You did well, Madison," he said. "Not everyone has the courage to stand up to their own family." I smiled faintly. It didn't feel like courage, more like survival. He nodded. Sometimes they're the same thing. I walked to my car and sat there for a while, just breathing. My phone buzzed, a single text from an unknown number, likely my mother again. I didn't open it. I deleted it without reading and drove off toward nowhere in particular, just away. That night I stopped by the ocean. The wind whipped hard, carrying salt and cold air across my skin. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt quiet inside, not the silence of avoidance, but the kind that comes after truth has scorched everything false. I thought about my grandparents again, how Grandpa used to say, "Peace isn't something you're given, it's something you take back." I finally understood what he meant. When I got home, I started packing boxes, not for escape this time, but for choice. A new city, a new job offer waiting, a place where my last name didn't feel like a weight. Before sealing the final box, I tucked one thing inside, the old photo of my grandparents standing in front of the house, smiling like they'd built something that mattered. Maybe they had. Maybe that house was never meant to be a home. Maybe it was meant to be a lesson. The next morning, I left before sunrise. I didn't tell anyone. No note, no social post, no explanations, just a quiet exit. As the road stretched out ahead, I checked the rearview mirror one last time. Not to see what I'd left behind, but to make sure it was finally fading.